Hey folks, Zach Osterman here, Iowa Insider, Indianapolis Star. He's Mike Niziolek, Bloomington Herald Times. Thank you for all of you who joined just to bother me. Indiana 56, Kennesaw State 9. Mike, I think it sort of felt like Kurt Cignetti started to see what he wanted to see in the second half of this game. I think he certainly was clear. Old Dominion's a win. Wins are hard. We're not going to give it back, but that's not good enough. I think Indiana was better in the first half against Kennesaw State than it was for a lot of the Old Dominion game, but you still felt like you really didn't see maybe the familiar sort of ease of dominance that we got used to, especially in games like this last year. I thought that second half, especially that third quarter, where I think Indiana scored 21 unanswered points and they scored 35 unanswered for the whole second half. You felt like maybe Kurt Cignetti started to recognize what he thought this team could be.
Well, it's fits and starts, and I think that's how he kind of started stumbling in the second quarter, because actually the first four drives, the defense was sending Kennesaw State backwards.
Yeah.
Forced 4 3-and-outs, 4 straight. 6 of the plays were tackles for loss out of the 12 total plays they ran, and that's pretty impressive. You can't really do much better than that, and they had negative passing yardage. So, I mean, there was that block, and then coming out of halftime, they allowed a third straight field goal, and then they forced two turnovers, and then that's it for Kennesaw State, basically. And then, and Kurt Cignetti left the guys in, offense and defense, kind of amidst that, as they pushed the lead to 40-50, nearly, to, I think, build on those moments. And he said he wants these guys to have reps. This is a new team, and a lot of the guys, in these moments, he didn't really know them. A lot of the guys last year, he was relying on JMU guys that he was really comfortable with, really familiar with. Didn't need them to kind of leave them in a 45-point blowout. This is a little bit different, and so I thought that was sort of maybe the more interesting thing and telling thing is that, look, next week is going to be what it is against Indiana State. They needed more time to kind of get back and show what they wanted to show, because last week, they did struggle for so much of that game to try to get some rhythm going.
When he was talking about, this is a new team, and as you said, last year was a new team, but it wasn't new to him in a lot of places. He also did a lot of talking about like culture. He said he's a tyrant on the sideline. He's hard on his team. I think there maybe was a little bit today. I talked to Aiden Fisher about it post game, and he said that like Cignetti got onto the team for the way they celebrated the interception. That he felt like today was a better opportunity, especially as the game started to get out of hand, because coaches tend to, sort of seize the opportunity to sort of talk about standards and expectations when you're winning. It's easier to do that when you're saying, hey, we're not satisfied. We keep going. I don't care if it's 42-9. I want 49-9. I want 56-9. I thought, I thought there was the physical sort of like, these guys need reps. These guys need time on the field. I also thought there was maybe that idea of culture, which again was something he didn't have to worry about last year. It wasn't something that, it was something he basically brought with him in a lot of ways from JMU, between his staff and obviously the number of players that transferred over from James Madison. I don't think he thinks this team can't do that. I just think he looks around and says, not as many of these guys understand what it takes to win my way. And I thought he was talking a little bit about that as well, when he was talking about really kind of driving through the third quarter and into the fourth quarter, keeping the starters in. Guys need reps. Guys need opportunities.
I thought it was actually two separate things, because I thought the stuff on the sidelines, how to go about your business, you talked about not being happy with the walkthrough on Friday. That was the culture stuff. Whereas I think literally the reps were time on task, and repeating things, because all the players kind of talked about Kellen Wyatt, a new guy. Even the veterans said, the more we rep things, the better it is, especially against not ourselves, or we know what the defense we're going against every day. It's different than practice, and so I think both things were important, and he used both as sort of a learning moment. Like you said, he was a bit of a tyrant and getting on guys. But he saw the focus throughout. Nothing changed as sort of the league got bigger.
I just thought like he saw those two things as kind of going hand in hand. That like the way the culture, the way you carry yourself, the intangible stuff is going to be reflected in the way you're executing on the field, and vice versa.
Sure.
That he needed his team to really feel like a front runner today, so he could say, this is how we act. This is how we get to the front, and this is how we stay at the front. We don't, you talk about sideline behavior again, the way they be getting on players for the way they're celebrating an interception, saying like, no, this is how we win, and this is how we win the way we want to win. Fernando Mendoza, obviously a big talking point today. Much better today than he was last week. I think in general, Indiana's offense was better today. I mean, they had 593 total yards of offense. They ran the ball exceptionally well again. It was Lee Beebe this time. It was kind of like Kalen Black was that number 2 back both of these games. Today it was more Lee Beebe than Roman Himby. Although I guess Himby had more.
They all had two. They were within 2 carries of each other, so they got about the same workload.
Yeah,
basically.
But Mendoza had 4 touchdowns, 3 to Elijah Sarratt. Sarratt had 13 targets, which was vastly more than anybody else got. He only had 5 last week. You felt like there was an emphasis on those two. When you talk about chemistry, when you talk about reps, when you talk about what happens on the field, getting you comfortable, it felt like those two were intent upon getting that connection stronger today than what we saw last week.
Well, I think it was the red zone offense too, and Cignetti said that had to improve. Simply, it was like that was not an option. Just to not get better because they did so poorly last time. 4-4 today with touchdowns. One of those was scored by Alberto. Riley Whiskey got a carry, punched it in. The Sarratt and Mendoza got a do-over on a throw that they missed in the Old Dominion game. Same route, same throw. He made the corrections that he literally said after the game without watching the video.
Like technical corrections, not I need to hit my guy.
Right. No, he's like, I needed him on the back shoulder, but extended, and he called his shot basically at the end of the game and made the corrections and did it right. Sarratt, you talk about kind of him being a focal point of the offense. It basically goes back to almost 2 years ago where he just didn't get the steady stream of targets like he did at JMU his last year, at Indiana last year. And so Cignetti talked about that. I think that's what he was kind of referring to, not just last week. He said kind of in camp, so his targets weren't where we kind of need him to be. And you kind of saw what he can do, moves the pile, just a technically proficient guy. Maybe he doesn't kind of blow you off the page with his athleticism, but just as a guy that you can rely on at all times to make a play, I feel like.
Quickly about the explosiveness, I think it's 6 runs of 20+ yards. Now, obviously, one of those is the end around with Omar Cooper, but Indiana only had, I'm looking at the number, Indiana only had 14 runs of 20+ yards last season. So, we thought we saw that in Old Dominion. If you're talking about tracking trends and trend lines with this team, you do feel like explosiveness in the ground game maybe is a bit of a development that Indiana didn't have last year, at least not as much of.
Sure.
And I think you like it because all 3 of those guys, all 3 of those running backs have a carry of 20+ today. And that's not like the end all be all sort of, bar to clear, but it's more the idea that all 3 of them have.
It's an added element to the game where they have explosiveness and get to that second level more consistently than the guys did.
And we didn't see, we talked about maybe getting the running backs more involved in the pass game as a way of compensating for not having as much of that explosiveness in the slot as Indiana had last season. Well, maybe they're just going to get the running backs more involved running the ball because they're more explosive.
Yeah, and Hemby did have a 25-yard catch today. So
I'm not saying he won't.
No, they haven't done much of it, but they've shown flash. It's in their bag, basically. And I think and today, Kirk said he made reference to that like we have to show certain things. We have to show creativity or things like that. And they did that. Had some really, one of the Sarratt touchdowns was a really nice design play, a kind of a cutback on a motion play that
he scored at least one touchdown like that last year. So
but something, like those that are designed wins, right? That he was just uncovered. It wasn't a physical play, but turning attention to the defense. Interesting game because, like I said, they had the great start. Stat wise, much better. I don't know what the tackles for loss were. 14 total, 2 sacks. But at the same time,
2 more turnovers.
Forced two turnovers. Easy for you to say. They allowed a bunch of chunk plays, especially in the passing game from the second quarter to the third quarter. Led the nation in that last year. Only allowed 23 passes of 20 yards or more. I think allowed 4 or 5 today, and 3 of those for 30 yards. Five explosive plays. But just weird in terms of they hold them to field goals both times they get in the red zone, but at the same time, just not a perfect performance. Things to clean up, but just different sort of breakdowns than last week. I think you feel good about the defense, but at the same time, there were things that bubbled up that you just didn't see last year.
I still think you again, if you're talking about standards, I suspect Brian Haynes is probably still going to be talking about standards next week. It is those chunk plays because that's what Indiana, I know there were some big ones in the Ohio State and Notre Dame games, but even in those games, Indiana was not getting gashed. Right. It was the inability to kind of change the game defensively when the offense was struggling. You are concerned if you are seeing a team like Kennesaw State tearing off some big numbers against you. And again, it is a mixed bag of a day, just like it was last week, because they play in the backfield so much. I mean, that they were much more dominant at the line of scrimmage today than they were a week ago, and not just because of the mobile quarterback element, but in the same breath, I mean, like if there's a moment that sort of sums up the defense's day, it's Jamari Sharp getting burned in single coverage and then recovering to strip the ball and recover the fumble that he forces as the receiver's going to the ground. So like it's sort of a like, hey, there's still clearly a lot to work on, and we've talked about depth and Lewis Moore. His future will likely be resolved for better or worse this week, but it does still feel like a little bit of a mixed bag. And again, maybe a little bit reflective of the wider ideas Cignetti has pushed home these last couple of weeks, which is we know we're not the complete article, but I know how to get us there, essentially.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at Odom, their quarterback's line, 10 for 16, 176 yards, obviously as the interception, but that's not the kind of completion percentage, the yardage on per catch that Brian Haynes is going to be happy with, and it just doesn't matter the score. And and you look at you can find way more good than bad. I mean, Kennesaw State was like 2 of 13 on third downs. It just
he's still going to be worried about six explosives for 158.
Right. That's what, and that's going to be a concern
with Luke Altmaier two weeks away.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, and maybe not Iowa, but then Oregon.
We just explosive passing plays.
Yeah, those are 5 or more.
But
with Oregon after that, so just things to watch out for. I mean, I don't think you have to sort of rip apart this performance because it was really one-sided and dominant, but just different things. It was just an interesting kind of back and forth, kind of give and take with the good and the bad.
And the first quarterback brother duo to throw for a touchdown pass in the same game since Brandon and Austin Allen did it for Arkansas in 2015. He's Mike Niziolek. I'm Zach Osterman. This has been Mind Your Banners postgame for Indiana 56, Kennesaw State 9. Hoosiers are 2-0 here Friday night. Important to remember that and make note if you've forgotten. Indiana State is a Friday night game, so Indiana will get the extra day off going into Illinois week, but they will play just 6 days from now here against the Sycamores. We will be back for that. Until then, for the Herald Times, the Indianapolis Star, heraldtimesonline.com, indystar.com/sports. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you soon.